The U.S. Air Force is buying a brand new fighter built on a 50-year-old jet on purpose, and it's not because they're stuck in the past. This jet once ruled the sky in an era when air combat was personal, loud, and unforgiving. But why is the Pentagon pouring fresh money into a design most people think belongs in a museum? Let's find out. By the late 2010s, the Air Force ran into a problem you can't PR your way out of. The jets meant to own the sky were simply running out of life, right when the world got hotter. What do you do when your air superiority workhorse starts aging into a liability? The F-15C and D models had been pushed way past what anyone originally planned. These weren't old jets. These were airframes built for one era, still being asked to do life-or-death missions in a completely different one. And at some point, the metal starts answering back. Structural fatigue stops being a maintenance term and turns into a flight safety threat. Cracks show up where you don't get a second chance. Then, 2007 happened. An F-15C broke apart in flight. And in that moment, the Air Force couldn't rely on confidence or tradition anymore. It had to treat every jet like a question mark until inspections proved otherwise. Okay, let's be real. While the Air Force is trying to refresh the fleet, the world isn't going to pause and wait its turn. The mission doesn't stop. Jets still sit on alert. Tracks still pop up out of nowhere. Phones still ring. Crews still sprint. And most of it feels like the same boring day-to-day routine. Until you remember that routine is exactly what grinds aircraft into the ground. Air defense is a daily grind. If the clock says launch, you launch. So here's the real question. Do you want to burn your most expensive stealth jets on every single guard dog run? Or do you want something fast, dependable, and ready right now without turning every sortie into a budget disaster? Which brings us to the obvious, why not? Why not just replace the old Eagles with F-35s and call it a day? Because the F-35 is a premium, stealth-first multi-role jet optimized for the hardest, most defended environments. It's built for that early, nasty part of a war, slipping into heavily defended airspace, finding threats, hitting protected targets, and surviving. That's not the same job as living on alert and launching intercepts year after year. Using a stealth fighter as your everyday guard dog is like using a race car as your delivery van. Yeah, it'll make the trip, but the cost shows up fast, in maintenance, in wear, in how often it's actually available. These jets live in the tens of millions, often north of $80 million a tail world, and the program spent years wrestling its way toward everything it was promised to be. So do you want your premium asset doing premium work, or getting worn down doing routine work? And then there's the problem you can't talk your way out of: numbers. The F-22 line is closed, and reopening it gets treated like a financial fairy tale. New programs don't move at internet speed. 6th Gen gets talked about like it's a light switch, flip it, and boom, perfect new air superiority jet. But in real life, those programs sit in the awkward space between real and not here yet for a long time. Meanwhile, the Air Force still has to cover the map today. Homeland defense doesn't wait. Allies still need reassurance. Forward deployments still happen. High-end fight planning keeps pulling from the same limited pool of jets. The real problem is simple. The demand is worldwide, and it's happening right now. So for the Air Force, getting jets into service fast isn't a nice extra. It's how you stay ready. While people online debate the perfect future aircraft, squadrons still have to launch for alerts, fly patrols, and support deployments, whether the next-gen plans are ready or not. That's where the F-15EX stops feeling like nostalgia and starts feeling like a practical answer, not a headline, not a flex, just usable time, aircraft that can show up on real ramps while the next era is still stuck on the horizon. And here's the question: if the mission doesn't pause, why would the plan? So when you hear F-15EX, don't think of some exhausted Cold War jet limping into the present. Think of a brand new Eagle built for modern systems and modern weapons on a platform the Air Force already understands. That familiarity matters because it keeps the changeover smooth. Yes, the Eagle's first flight was in 1972, reaching initial operational capability by 1976. But that's not the point. The point is, the airframe still has what you need: power, space, and room to grow, so it can keep getting upgraded without trying to reinvent the aircraft from scratch. And here's the key. The F-15EX isn't here to replace stealth, it's here to support it. Stealth is at its best early, when the airspace is dangerous and you need to break things open. After that, the question changes. Once the doors open, do you want more invisible, or do you want more weapons ready to go? Because stealth has a trade-off. To stay low observable, you're limited by what you can carry internally. That's not a mistake. It's the price you pay. But in a longer fight, that limit starts to bite. It stops being about who gets the first look and becomes about who can keep pressure on the other side without draining the most expensive jets on every mission. That's the lane the F-15EX fills. More weapons on one jet, more staying power, and more flexibility without asking stealth aircraft to compromise what makes them special. Think teamwork, not competition. Stealth sets the stage, and the Eagle shows up ready to carry the load when volume matters. So what's smarter in a world that won't slow down, betting everything on one perfect tool, or building a mix that can keep showing up? People love calling the F-15EX a missile truck, like it's just a meme. But here's why that label sticks. Nothing else in the US fighter lineup is built to show up with that much air-to-air ammo on its back. And in a real fight, that's not flexing, it's staying power. Want a concrete example? Wright-Patterson has talked publicly about the EX carrying 12 air-to-air missiles, think AIM-120 AMRAAMs and AIM-9Xs, while older F-15Cs were typically sitting around 8. That's not trivia. That's 4 extra chances to take a shot before you're forced to peel off and go reload. Now ask yourself, what does 4 extra shots actually buy you? It buys time at the station, it buys more coverage, it buys the ability to keep pressure on an opponent instead of touching gloves once and immediately heading back to the pit stop. In the kind of long, messy airfight planners worry about now, the jet that can keep swinging usually controls the pace. And here's where it gets even more interesting, because modern air combat isn't always about the closest jet winning. It's about the jet that can fire at the right moment, using the best shared view of what's happening. So the enemy isn't just fighting a plane, they're fighting a connected team. If your side sees the situation faster and gets weapons out sooner, the other side spends the whole fight reacting. And in air combat, living in reaction mode is how you lose. But then comes the obvious pushback. Okay, if it's not stealth, can it survive? Fair question. The answer depends on how you employ it and what you've built into it. The EX isn't rolling into the sky with 1970s electronics. This era starts with information. If you can't sort the picture quickly, you're basically just burning fuel. That's why the F-15EX leans into modern sensing and a serious survivability package, especially on the electronic warfare side. The Air Force keeps pointing at upgrades like EPOWSS, the Eagle Passive Active Warning and Survivability System. Because the moment a jet realizes it's being targeted, what happens next decides whether it keeps fighting or becomes a cautionary tale. And it's not only about what's installed today, it's about how fast you can evolve tomorrow. That's where the EX's open mission systems approach matters. Instead of turning every new capability into a decade-long upgrade saga, the point is to make integration smoother and quicker. So here's a question. In a world where threats change constantly, would you rather have the perfect jet on paper or the jet you can keep updating at the pace of reality? Now zoom out, because the F-15EX has another advantage people overlook. It's big enough to carry the really large standoff weapons. As weapons get longer ranged and heavier, especially the kinds of systems tied to hypersonic class discussions, payload and size stop being nice-to-haves and start being the whole reason you're invited to the mission. And while we're talking about things that sound boring until they suddenly aren't, the second seat. A lot of people hear two-seat and think trainer. In modern combat, that extra seat can be pure bandwidth, because the workload isn't just flying. It's managing sensors, comms, data links, threat reactions, coordination, and weapons, while everything moves fast and mistakes get expensive. So ask yourself, if the battle is information heavy, wouldn't you want an extra brain in the cockpit? That ties directly into where the Air Force wants to go next, manned-unmanned teaming. If you're coordinating with unmanned systems that can scout, jam, carry weapons, or stretch the formation, cockpit bandwidth becomes a weapon in its own right. The EX fits that direction naturally, not because it's futuristic looking, but because it can handle the workload. And finally, money, real money, not just sticker price arguments. Procurement cares about how fast you can field something and how hard it is to integrate it into real units. Training pipelines, maintenance conversion, parts, ramp readiness, that's the hidden tax that burns programs alive. The F-15EX dodges a lot of that because it lives inside an ecosystem that already exists. Bases know the Eagle world, maintainers have muscle memory, procedures are built. So even though the EX is modern under the skin, it isn't forcing the Air Force to rebuild its daily operating life from scratch. So here's the real question. Do you want a force that's ideal someday? Or a force that's ready, connected, and loaded right now? That's why the production line detail matters way more than people assume. The F-15 wasn't some extinct dinosaur you had to clone back into existence. Advanced Eagles kept rolling out for partner nations, which meant the tooling, the workforce, and the know-how stayed alive. So when the US said, "We need new Eagles," it wasn't reviving a dead program, it was leaning on a pipeline that was already moving. And that's a big deal. Because if the clock is ticking, do you really want to wait for a clean sheet jet that has to crawl through every step from scratch? Now, look at where the Air Force keeps pointing when it talks about real-world demand, especially the Pacific. That theater is brutal in a boring way. It's huge, it's far, and it eats sorties. So the question becomes simple. Can you keep a steady flow of combat power in the air, over distance, without running out of steam? And it's not just a US mindset either. Partners facing serious threats don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect future platform. That's the tell. The value isn't only what the jet is, it's when it can arrive. Step back and you see the larger shift. This isn't one program. It's a philosophy change. Across the Pentagon, there's a growing acceptance that perfect but late can lose you the moment, so the force starts to look more balanced. Systems you can field, expand, and refresh without spending forever stuck in development purgatory. So when you spot an F-15 still in the mix, don't think, "Why is that old airframe still here?" Ask the better question, what job is it doing that newer jets don't do as cleanly in the real world? Because that's the actual story. The Eagle sticks around, because modern air power isn't one magic airplane. If you're the kind of person who thinks smart strategy beats flashy headlines, let us know in the comments below. And if you want more breakdowns like this, clean, grounded, and built around what the mission actually demands, hit like, subscribe, and stick with us.